Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Pro Engineering. This is going to be another installment of the My Car series. And for this episode, we're going to focus on my RC10 B2. First off, I'm aware that I haven't done a buyer's guide on a number of these RC10s, but I am working on it, and it's simply a matter of getting to the track, and it's simply a bit of a time issue to go to the track and get all the footage for these. But these My Car series are quite easy for me to film, so let's go ahead and fill the time with some of those. It was purchased brand new at Tony's Hobbies and Toys in La Puente, California, which is still there, but now it's in Baldwin Park. And I got a good deal because, of course, the car was already obsolete. The keen viewer will notice that the front suspension as well as the rear skid plate are in fact B3 parts. The reason why the front arms are B3 is because the first time it went to the track, the lanes were separated by these big drainage pipes, and there was usually a cap or a cone on the end of one of the pipes. Well, a previous driver had knocked one loose. I took a turn too tight and the car went straight into the pipe. Unfortunately, the pipe was only about that big, so really only the middle of the car went in and everything else just kind of went rolling away. And all they had at the shop was the B3 arms, which are a little bit different. Don't ask me what is and what isn't different on them, but they are a tad different. This was not the top range model, although it did come with the hardened anodized shocks and full bearings. I know that there was the team kit, I believe, that had all the blue parts. This is not that car. The body is from a B3, and I believe this is Team Blue Groove. This is the original body that the car came with, and this was the body that I raced with for years and years and years. So this, again, this is the kit body. You know, it's definitely not perfect. It's got some areas where the paint's chipping off, and I'm planning on tidying this up a little bit, but in terms of cracks or damage, there's a crack there, a little bit of a couple cracks back here, and otherwise the body's in good shape. I made these decals from kind of a generic sticker sheet. Always liked stripes. In fact, even the RC10 logo is supposed to say B2, and I just cut that area off and replaced it with a little filler panel. These are also the factory rims from this car. They did come white, and I dyed them red. Almost every car at the time was running these neon green wheels, which I really didn't care for, so I changed it up a little bit here. You'll notice in a lot of my race cars, my wings are cheap. You know, I don't even know what this is from, but I buy these kind of by the lot on eBay. Cut them quickly, paint them quickly, throw them on the car. They get ruined, chuck them. As far as I'm concerned, they're disposable. The bodies I try and do a little bit more work on. This is a very simple paint job. These stripes on here are they're not decals. They're all masked off. And I've mentioned this in an earlier video, but I have a rule of thumb where if I spend a half an hour on a body for one of these race cars, that is my max. I don't want to spend any additional time because then I can get attached to it and don't want to hurt it and all that. So, I try and get these done quick. And you'll notice, got some Hornet decals here, just some leftover pieces. I try and put decals on the car that really do correspond to what the car has in it. Speaking of what is in this car, for what I own, the car is fairly modern. This is a Novack Kinetic Esc. This is a prototype ESC that I picked up from a buddy of mine that was working at Novack. The ESC works really, really well, except given that it's a prototype, the reverse is a little finicky. Yes, it works fine, and usually I don't use reverse anyway, but I found that it tends to be problematic. The motor is insane on this car. My RC10 has a 7.5. This one here, I believe, is even speedier. Forgive me, I can't tell what it is, but this thing here, again, the motor is dialed back to about 30% of what it can actually output. Going down the straight, it will still pop a wheelie if you floor it, so you've got to kind of be careful. And I've been asked, well, why don't you just buy a slower motor? Because I had it. Simple as that. I had it, therefore it's in the car. Receiver is a basic FlySky. This is the FSGR 3E. I own countless numbers of those. The speed control is a pretty standard Airtronics unit. I believe it's a 94102 stock servo. The radio is this FlySky unit. I'm sorry, it is a FlySky based radio. This is kind of repackaged by Turnigy. It is the GTX3. Again, I've had this for years and absolutely adore this radio. Like as I mentioned earlier, the car is all full ball raced. Has this nice RPM gear cover. These things, they really, really last. The factory Lexan ones don't last but a matter of minutes. Speaking of a matter of minutes. The rear shock tower on this car is HG, I believe that's Hammond Grumman. The original one, I broke 3 in one day at the track once, and I just said, forget it, and I bought this one here. And comically, later that day, I don't know how this happened, rolled the car over again, bent it. After that, I straightened it all out, and it's never had a problem since. Why I managed to knock out 3 shock towers and bend this one here in one day, we will never know. Nevertheless, that did happen. For the most part, everything else on the car is stock. It does have the stock front bell crank. It does have a Kimbrough servo saver up front. I'm running the green front shock springs, which I believe are the soft ones. And at the rear, we've got the silver, which I believe are the medium springs. I could be a little wrong about that. Most of the car has these titanium turnbuckles. Now, I never bought them for the car. I just kind of found them in a bin that I had. So I only found 3. So you can see we have these 3 titanium ones. We've got 1 stock one back here and 2 stock ones further at the rear. But really, I never had problems bending any of these things. So I never, aggressively moved forward and found the rest. The car, for the most part, is pretty darn stock and unspectacular. I do want to throw my original body back on this car and get a nice look at that. The racetrack I used to race at was M&M Hobbies or I should say M&M Raceway in Corona, California. It is the same track that Brian Kinwald would practice at. I don't know if they ever had massive championship races there. I only was a kind of a weekend racer. I actually can't fully install it now because the ESC is in the way, but we'll just kind of set it like that and get a look of how it used to look at the track. This car here is one of my favorite modern buggies. I think it still retains that original buggy aesthetic, despite the fact that it actually is a modern racing buggy. From here on out, and again, this is simply subjective, so I'm only talking about cosmetics. I never really loved the look of modern buggies to this day. I feel that they look too purposeful. They're, I'm sure, spectacular on the track, but for me, that doesn't really matter. I want them to look good as well, and I feel like this is one of the last buggy-looking buggies that was ever produced for competition purposes. Like I said, I will have some videos of this car running in the Buyer's Guide series, but for now, this is my RC10 B2. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.